cross-cut sleds were pretty handy, and I don't have one, but I do have some extra plywood. This should be an easy project. So making a cut like this, you don't want to rely on the fence. There isn't enough material to guide across the fence to prevent it from wobbling. What that means is at best you'll get a bad cut, and at worst you'll bind the blade and the wood will come flying back out at you, and that's just going to be a mess, and it's pretty dangerous actually. So that's where the cross-cut sled comes in. This would be affixed in the sled, and the sled would be fixed into these channels, and as I push the sled it will glide easily and smoothly and straight through the blade. That's the goal anyway. And to make that happen, that's what these channels are for. Now ideally you'd want to use steel insert that goes in, it fits perfectly, and it will glide forwards and backwards smoothly without having me play sideways. Problem is, these channels aren't machined very well, and any flat bar stock that I get is also not going to be machined. And what that means is, it could very easily bind, especially if I'm going to be putting a bar on both sides, which I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to use wood instead. Probably this piece of wood. I'm going to plane it to thickness, see if it fits in, and see how smoothly it'll glide. So this is the plan. That's the table saw, that's the saw blade, and these are the two channels. The crosscut sled will go over here. It'll have two guides to the left and right of the blade, and the top and bottom will have two walls. It'll help me hold down the material. So if everything goes well, hopefully it'll end up looking like that. So you're always going to want to make sure that your hose is clear of your outfeed table, because the wood will just hit it and pop the hose out. So something like this is what you're looking for. That'll allow the wood to clear under it without hitting the hose. So I got this poplar to shape. And it's a good fit. So I didn't plane these down flush to the tabletop. I'm going to be putting a dado underneath the sled because I will be gluing this, and I just wanted a better joint. So of course measuring and squaring is really important when doing the sled because all of our cuts are going to be based off of this, so you do have to be careful with that. I'm going to line this up, I guess, there-ish. The dado needs to be this deep. That is about, so the dado needs to be about this deep. Now I know what you're thinking. That doesn't look like a dado blade. And you're right. I really don't feel like putting the dado blade in there. It's a pain in the neck on this table saw to change out the blade. So I'm just going to use a regular blade and make a lot of passes. Yeah, this isn't going to work here. So when I cut this groove, it just had to be close, but this one has to be exactly perfect if the two are going to line up and be parallel to one another. So for that I have to measure it very accurately. It is 9 and 29, 32, 20. It has to be here and there. And now I'm going to cut the dados for the side supports. So I position the blade to cut up through the 5th layer, but nothing more. That'll give me a clean cut on the plywood. Wow, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. I really wasted a lot of time not putting in that dado blade. So the crosscut sled isn't done yet, but I think I can use it to cut the side supports. So this piece will go in the dado. This piece will go next to it. It'll all be glued together, and when I'm done, I'll trim off the top so that it's even. So the back side is done, and I just glued up the front side and clamped it in. And if you look at that piece of wood there in the back, that is just a 2x6 that I squared up the ends and clamped in between temporarily to make sure that the two sides are square to the bottom. So I intentionally cut these a little bit shy of touching the bottom when everything is glued up. I did that because if this was even just a little bit too high, the sled wouldn't sit flush against the table. I'd rather there be a gap under here than a gap under the sled. I also want to glue everything up while the rails are in the channel. The reason is to make sure that there isn't some strange angle that ends up developing during gluing and clamping that ruins the sled from sliding. So I'm going to have to take up that gap. I'm just going to use these staples. And we're going to dry fit this together. So this will glue up well. And now to clamp it up. And now it's time to cut the slot. So I've applied a coat of finishing wax to it. And I've added this block over here to give me a little protection as the blade exits. If I put it into the slots, try to move it, there really isn't any play with it. In fact, it moves the whole table. It also slides very smoothly. That should do it.